On September 29th, around just after 3 o'clock in the morning, the Westminster Police Department received a 911 call from a young man stating that two men had broken into his home, attacked him and his mother, and that he was concerned for her well-being.
The caller is 17-year-old Ryan Gerges.
About 3:30 in the morning, my brother Ryan called and told me that people had broken into the house. He had got tied up.
Ryan's brother, 23-year-old Richard Gerges, also lives in the home, but had stayed at his girlfriend's apartment that night.
Ryan was distraught. He was frantically trying to relay a message to the responding officers about what exactly had occurred.
He had duct tape that was loosely around his neck that appeared to have been wrapped around his face that he had pulled down. He also had duct tape around his wrists. He had some minor abrasions on his face, but overall, he wasn't too badly injured.
As officers approached a room upstairs, they peered in, and that's where they first spotted a female body laying on the floor.
Ryan and Richard's mother, 55-year-old Harriet Gerges, is pronounced dead at the scene.
Harriet had multiple stab wounds and cut wounds all over her upper back. The nature of the killing was so violent, gruesome, it seemed almost personal.
The brothers are taken to the station, separated the entire time, while detectives process the crime scene and search for clues.
We had no forced entry that we were able to locate. There was no robbery. There was no demand for money. It was also very unusual to us that Ryan Gerges was not murdered and that he was left to be a witness in this case. We really felt Harriet was the target.
And then, they both, pushed me, and then I fell over, and then they dragged me to the floor, and they were, stalking me.
He said he was fighting for his life, but the suspect was still able to overpower him.
But then my mom came, and then the guy, put tape over my mom's mouth and everything, and took her somewhere.
Ryan tells detectives the intruders then tied him up with duct tape and a shoelace and threw him in his closet.
Ryan described this intruder that was in his bedroom as a male black, approximately 23 years of age, wearing dark clothing, gloves, and real muscular build. And then the second suspect, he had a mask on, so he wasn't able to see his face.
So Ryan told us that he heard the suspects possibly leave the house. And he takes that moment to muster up some courage and gets himself out of these bindings enough to where he can get out of the house and try to call for help.
We were suspicious as to why he didn't take a moment to check in on his mother before exiting the house, but he chose to run out.
He did tell investigators that he received an AOL-type email message that had sort of a threat embedded in it. And this was a week before the murder.
And popped up you better watch your back, I know where you live.
Maybe his mother heard or saw something she wasn't supposed to. But if somebody made such great effort to make sure Harriet Gerges was dead, why was Ryan spared?
I'm sorry to have to tell you that your mom did pass away. It's trying to do everything we can to make sure we find the people that are responsible for this.
Their emotions seemed very real. We started to become confident that they were not directly involved in the murder of their mother.
With no evidence tying Ryan or Richard to the crime, police clear and release the brothers.
I just couldn't believe it. I was it wasn't registering in my head what was going on. It felt like hours of just questions, and I was getting treated like a suspect. They're suspicious just because I didn't check on my mom. I told them I didn't know who was still inside the house. I felt like it was my only escape from hell, was to just keep on running.
Just minutes after the brothers are released, their father arrives at the station.
Magdi Gerges had learned about the murder of his wife, Harriet, and came to the police department to talk to detectives.
He told the police that he was at his apartment in the city of Long Beach, where he had spent the night reading the Bible. And then he got up very early in the morning to go to work.
I'm very devastated. We lived together for 24 years. She's the mother of my kids.
Magdi told detectives that they had been separated for approximately 6 months. And even though this might not be exactly what he wanted, he was respectful of her decision.
Yeah, she doesn't want to continue the relationship anymore. I have to split her free.
Any homicide investigation where a spouse is murdered, we start to look at the other spouse as a suspect.
Trying to get an idea of why someone would do something like this.
We wanted to dig a little bit deeper into why they were separated to start with. Was there a reason for him wanting to do her harm?
This was definitely a direction we had to follow. Could Magdi be involved at some level? Absolutely.
Magdi had a landline in the Long Beach apartment, and there were telephone calls that were made to that landline where he spoke with Ryan.
So we knew that there wasn't enough time for him to leave the scene of the crime and be in Long Beach at the time to pick up Ryan's phone call.
But, it was quite plausible that maybe he hired somebody to murder his wife.
Did you pay anybody to do this? You?
Yeah.
Did you pay anybody to break into your wife's house?
What kind of question is that?
That's a question I have to ask.
No, I would never do that.
Magdi Gerges remains a person of interest. But without further evidence against him, he's released. The brothers moved to Sacramento. And less than a week after his mother's murder, Richard's fears are validated.
Ryan received another AOL message that was rather menacing and threatening. The message said something to the effect of, "How did you like your gift? LOL, LOL."
Yeah, it was really alarming. Why would someone send me that?
Maybe this whole thing was supposed to be to scare Ryan, and somehow it went too far, and Ariad got killed.
Me and my little brother were starting to be suspicious of my dad. Certain things just weren't adding up. Like talking with my little brother, he said that that night of the murder, he called up my dad. And my brother told him about all the stuff that happened. And my dad still went to work, which is like crazy.
So Ryan reported he witnessed one of the suspects trying to take shoelaces off of some shoes that were on the floor. And he remembered that he took his glove off to do that. The shoelaces were processed, but DNA technology is a lot better now than it was in 2004.
Detective Wilson sends the shoelaces to the lab. 1 month later, they find DNA.
We entered it into CODIS, and we got a hit.
The DNA came back to an individual by the name of Anthony Bridget, whose rap sheet read more like a resume for Dial a Hitman.
Anthony Bridget is a known gang member who is serving 5 years in prison on a drug-related offense.
I didn't find any direct correlation between Magdi and Bridget. I mean, there was nothing to indicate that they knew each other.
It's starting to paint a picture that Magdi hired Anthony Bridget through a middleman to kill his wife. Detective Wilson and our prosecutor, they devised a genius plan.
We have undercover agents approach Magdi Gerges, posing as friends of Mr. Bridget.
What's up, man?
Let me holler at you for a few tips. Let me holler at you for a second.
We used the ruse that they want some hush money.
Check it out, man. My homie locked up in the pen right now. Please spoke to him about him killing your wife and you in this house. You know what I'm saying? We don't care about that. The thing is, we want to get paid for it. We're not going to say shit, you know what I mean? We want 5 racks, 5,000.
You know, they basically said, hey, we want the money, call me tomorrow, and we'll set it up.
And they dropped off a piece of paper with their number, and Magdi takes the piece of paper.
Give me a call, man.
On the 31st, the undercover officer receives a phone call from Magdi Gerges.
What's going on? Who's this?
The confirmation of 9 years of an investigation and a theory becomes reality. Because what Magdi says is,
I thought you got paid everything.
I already paid.
And then the icing on the cake. During the conversation, Magdi's being a little suspicious and says, hey, who's the middleman?
Who was the middleman?
I ain't worried about that.
I'm like, oh my God, we were right. This is how this murder went down.
The undercover agents instruct Megdi to meet them with the money the following day.
We are absolutely on the edge of our seat because if there was a money exchange, Magdi was going to be arrested. And that's exactly what happened.
We're all like, oh my God, oh my God.
It was just a big sigh of relief.
At this point, I called Richard and basically told him, hey, we arrested your dad.
My mind was blown. I was like, yes, yes. And I think I was like crying on the phone too and stuff.
All of our suspicion was answered at that time. But at the same time, I mean, it was also my father, so it just wasn't a win-win situation at all.
1 year later, Megdi's trial for the murder of Harriet Gerges begins.
The defense strategy was basically that Ryan is just a drug dealer who had his mother killed.
I was like, man, what kind of dad does that, man? Like, just absolutely, like, could care less about their kids. He's just like, yeah, pretty sad.
When it's the prosecution's turn, they're armed with Megdi's own words on the sting operation tapes. After 4 weeks of trial and 2 days of deliberation, the jury reaches a verdict.
He was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, and they found the special circumstance of murder of financial gain.
My dad had no remorse for anything. No confess, no repent, no nothing.
2 months later, Megdi Gerges is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Anthony Bridget was also sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
We got you, Magdi, we got you, Mr. Bridget, and now we're gonna find the other guys.
There's a middleman and another murderer still out there, so we still have work to do.